The scene in the lodge is chaos. There are random pieces of furniture strewn all over the place, yet somehow all the books are still on the shelves. Impressive. Sam Coe? Damn, no! Sarah and I walk over to his body. Cora is there, barely holding it together. To be honest, we're all barely holding it together. Sarah holds onto Sam and says her goodbyes, as we find out that Noel is still missing. She had grabbed all the artifact pieces and run away into the tunnels to the Well, a settlement underneath New Atlantis, to keep them away from the Hunter. We head to the tunnels to find her. She's hiding in fear underneath a stairwell. As we're just beginning to calm down, and she hands over the artifact pieces, the Hunter appears and begins attacking me. The only option we have is to run, to try and reach our ship and jump away, to live another day and finish our adventure in the Starfield. So begins our escape through the Well. The Hunter is firing his weapon at everyone and everything, trying to stop me and get the artifacts back. I just run with the crowd. What better place to blend in than mass hysteria, right? Sarah, Noel, and I duck and weave through the walkways towards the elevator to the surface, with the Hunter doing that teleportation thing he does behind us. We reach the elevator and cross the space yard courtyard, quickly getting in some experience with my boost pack in combat, and we quickly hop aboard, taking off into orbit as fast as I can punch the controls. Once we hit orbit, the Hunter hails us from his ship, telling us that this pursuit has been interesting, and that he may have underestimated my part in whatever is going on here. He tells me to continue collecting the artifacts if I must, and that we'd meet again. As he jumps away, we sail over to the Eye to check in and regroup, informing the people up here that Sam didn't make it. Vladimir rightly suggests that clearly the Lodge and the Eye are no longer safe places to store the artifacts, and I'm given the option to build the collected artifact thingy, called the Armillary, on either one of my outposts or in my ship, or I can keep the artifacts on my person until I'm ready to build it. But likely, wherever I choose to keep them, is going to be a constant target for the Starborn that are after them. I elect to keep them on my ship. I spend most of my time planetside anyway, and for some strange reason I get this feeling that the Starborn are not, let's say, programmed to attack my ship unless I'm actively flying in it. No idea where that feeling comes from, but I run with it anyway. We all return to the Lodge to assess the destruction. New Atlantis is a hot mess. Seems that the Hunter did a number on it in the chase. Reaching the Lodge, I'm tasked with collecting Sam's belongings, so I take his clothes out of the crate in the basement and immediately put them on while they're still warm, because people grieve in different ways, so shut up. Cora is pretty mad at me for leaving them behind to head up to the Eye, and blames me for Sam's death, which is all the more poignant as I'm wearing her dead dad's clothes in front of her, so yeah, fair enough. She leaves the Lodge for a while to clear her head, and I get into a chat with Mateo about what this Unity thing is that the Hunter mentioned. He tells me it has nothing to do with the game engine and the bonkers new install charge they implemented like 300 years ago, but rather might have something to do with his religion, the Sanctum Universum, and its leader, Keeper Aquilus. He's used the word in many of his speeches, so we agree that that's our next best lead, and Mateo walks me over to the church. The Keeper takes us into his office and tells us a story from the early days of the church's writings about a pilgrim that came and met with the founders of his and two other religions in the galaxy, the Varun and the House of Enlightenment, giving each of them a part of the truth. Afterwards, the pilgrim goes on to his own resting place. Keeper Aquilus believes the stories he told to each of these religious founders, when combined, might lead to the location of the pilgrim's resting place. Luckily, some representatives of each of those religions are here in New Atlantis, so I head off to speak to them, and luckily, each of them knows the story, each having obvious references to numbers. Seems the Keeper was right. The numbers combined match with coordinates and a location on the planet Indum 2. Before I take off though, Sarah and I have a heart-to-heart chat on the ship about everything going on. I profess my love. She says it's not you, it's me, but I'll love you if we do this one teeny tiny quest for me first. So I decide to put the universe saving on hold for a minute and we embark on her quest. Seems like she's feeling really guilty about some mistakes she made during her service with the United Colonies during the Colony War that took place against the Freestar Collective 20 years prior. A ship she was commanding was shot down, and only 2 of the drop pods made it away, hers and some other members of her crew. They crashed on a planet, and she wants to get back there to get closure on their fates. After some quick investigation in the UC headquarters to find the name of the planet where her shuttle crashed down, we get a result and fly to the planet Cassiopeia 1. Her shuttle is right where she left it, and we check the onboard logs to see if we can get a bead on the crash site of the other shuttle, which luckily we do. Sarah reminisces about the year she spent alone here waiting for rescue, and I provide as much emotional support as the responses that come to my head can muster. Hopping over to the other crash site, we find something we don't expect. A treehouse, built out of the shuttle, and a teenage girl living inside named Sona. Now, I'm sure you've already guessed that she's a descendant of the original crew, so go pat yourselves on your smart little heads, because you're bang on the money. Unfortunately, everybody else is dead though, so there's that. Her parents were eaten by the local hostile fauna, but it seems while they were still alive, they spoke admirably of Sarah to their daughter, and Sona is impressed and excited to meet her. Sarah is also finally able to let go of the guilt and doubt she'd been carrying, not knowing if they felt she had let them down by their ship being destroyed in the battle under her command. We convince Sona that it's probably unwise for a girl to live and die alone on a rock with death animals everywhere, so she comes back to the lodge with us, just in time for Sam's funeral. Everybody says a few words. It's a somber but supportive event. I again feel a bit guilty that I'm unabashedly wearing his clothing at his funeral in front of everybody, but what you gonna do? Cora and her mother are there. Apparently she's stepping in to raise Cora now, and Cora is leaving Constellation for a while. She doesn't hate me anymore, she just doesn't want to be here. And all fair, you do you. Sarah and I head outside and walk over to the Colony War Memorial where she pays her last respects to her crew that died, and then says she wants to talk to me by the New Atlantis waterfall. Once we reach that beautifully romantic view, she finally gives in to her reciprocal feelings for me and boom, we're official. And she says sweet nothings to me now every time we talk. It's great. Plus she makes suggestive comments every time we get out of bed. Sarah Morgan has now seen Morgan. Back to questing. We land on Indum 2, and what we find is an abandoned homestead, so it seems like we're on the right course. There are various journals I pick up and read that the Pilgrim has written, and all of them are pretty cryptic, but it does seem that the Pilgrim was struggling with some sort of decision between being reborn and chasing power, or staying put and embracing compassion. On a computer terminal is a short quiz testing me on what I read, and feeling very much like I'm filling out a second grade book report, I dutifully answer the questions. Luckily, I read the book, and I passed with flying colors. There is a final book inside this locked room, and this one gives us the clue to our next destination. It also seems the Pilgrim ultimately decided to choose compassion. His journal points us to Hyla 2, with an island that hides the scorpion, and the scorpion's sting that hides the truth. Hyla 2, we comin' for you. A short jaunt across Hyla 2's surface, and we come across an ancient monument that is most definitely scorpion-shaped. From the tail above is coming some sort of beam of light shining down at the base, which shows the engraving of a constellation. Some holographic controls or something allows me to adjust the beam, and eventually it hits one of the stars right at the end of the constellation and a holographic display lights up. Apparently I recognize that it's the constellation of Scorpio, and the star it is highlighting is the star right at the end of the tail. Guess that's where we're off to next. As we hit orbit around that star, immediately we find the ship of the Hunter, and apparently the other Starborn from the ship Helix is on board as well. They invite me on board to Parley, wherein I learn a whole bunch of muncha. Apparently the other Starborn is actually known as the Emissary, and the Starborn aren't a race so much as individual people with similar but independent goals, whatever that means. They explain that the Unity is a place, a gateway, where Starborn are reborn from. Collecting the artifacts together creates something called the Armillary and is what gets one there. And then he completely blows my head off by revealing his face, and it's fucking Sam Coe! What the hell is going on here? He died! He explains that the universe that we're in is the only one that I've ever been to, but he's been to hundreds. The Sam Coe in this universe died. In his original universe, it was him that ran to the Eye, leaving me behind to defend the artifacts, and the Hunter killed me. He went on to collect the rest of the artifacts, entered the Unity, and became Starborn, which is how he's here in this universe now. Basically, the Emissary believes that due to the powers granted by the Unity and the artifacts in the temples, there should be a governing body that decides who should be granted access to the artifacts. Whereas the Hunter believes that anybody strong and persistent enough to gather them should be allowed to do so. The Hunter then reveals himself to be Father Aquilus. What the hell? Is everybody and their dog a Starborn these days? They end by telling me to continue on my search. They will stop interfering because the progress I've made in the quest for the artifacts is the furthest I've ever gotten in any universe they've met me in, which they are taking as a sign, but eventually I will have to choose a side. emissary or hunter, or choose neither side and face death at their hands. Great. Something to look forward to then. Guess I better make my mind up soon, or beef my arsenal up enough to dead them both if necessary. Finally, the emissary hands me a key to a base on the moon, like Earth's moon, Luna, and urges me to head there to check it out. Sarah and I disembark and head off, because we basically just need to mentally decompress after all the blowings that our mind have just received. We take a quick pit stop at the lodge to tell everybody all the things we've learned, and more mind explosions take place. I won't have myself getting blown without then in turn blowing others. It's rude. We eventually head off again and reach the moon, and find the Nova Galactic Research Station abandoned on the surface. Inside the moon base are a bunch of data slates with logs and recordings about some sort of secret research project. Seems it's where grav jump technology was first tested and invented. Something about folding the gravity of space-time to bring your destination closer to you and passing through the fold.
Magic.
Apparently the team up here was in a bit of a black box though as to where the source of the formulas they were using came from. Seems like NASA, back on old Earth, was holding that secret close to the chest. Oh yeah, I guess I should give a bit of history there. Earth isn't inhabitable anymore. Several hundred years ago, Earth's atmosphere began leaking out basically, and over a period of 50 years while it was happening, the inhabitants basically had to develop space travel to leave the planet and find a new home, or homes, for humanity. So they did, lucky us. Which is what led to the United Colonies and New Atlantis on Jemison. So yeah, short history lesson there for you. We decide we want to know these secrets NASA was keeping, and set our next destination as the NASA facility at Cape Canaveral. It's a dusty, dry shithole basically, but the launch tower is still standing. We find a way in and head down into the facility, first through the old NASA museum and guest area, and then into the facility proper, where there be secrets. And dragons, maybe. We dodge turrets and robot defenses to find many logs on our way down, that detail the issues from the NASA side of things. And what we learn is pretty damn horrific. It seems like the repeated use of the grav drive technology on the moon that was developed is what caused the slow seeping and destruction of Earth's atmosphere. What's worse is that it was secretly known that this would be a possibility, and the research proceeded anyway, because of money and ambition. Because of that, humanity completely lost its native home. Pretty intense. In the very bowels of the facility, we encountered the device that provided these gravitational formulas and anomalies. And by now, I'm sure you've guessed that it's an artifact piece, which the lead scientist on the project, Victor Aiza, touched. Had a vision in which he spoke to himself and learned of the fate of Earth and all the formulas and knowledge about the grav drive travel. Pretty wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff. I disable the machine and grab the artifact, and Sarah and I are immediately set upon by a shit ton of Starborn. It's a desperate struggle to work back through the facility to get back to the surface, given that I'm over-encumbered by all the stuff that I've been stealing on the way down, but we prevail and take off, with one more piece of the puzzle in tow. The emissary and the hunter are waiting for us on the surface, and they explain that I was sent here to learn about the dangers to humanity the artifacts can pose. We gained space travel, but lost our home. I'm given the ultimatum they spoke about earlier. I really don't like either of these asshats, so I tell them both to go to hell. They tell me to gather the final missing artifact pieces and to meet them at a place called the Buried Temple, where they'll kill me and take the artifacts from us, basically. Yay! So I'm starting to think I'll be killing them instead. But for now, I have a lead on a few more artifact pieces from Vladimir, so I take off to the planet Freya 3. As soon as we hit orbit, we hear a distress call from a satellite nearby pointing us to the Nishina research station on the ground. But once we land and head up to the station, everything seems to be fine. The man on the intercom says there's been no distress signal, but when we explain what the signal said, he's suspicious and informs us that the director will want to hear this. But for security reasons, he can only let me in, so Sarah waits outside. Inside I meet Ethan, the security guard, and he starts leading me through the base, which looks clean and white and pristine. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, there's a flash, and Ethan is gone. Everything around me looks burned and destroyed, and there's this alien goop flesh all over the place. What the hell is going on here? I wander around the ruins for a moment, reach a doorway, and flash! I'm back in the fresh lab, and Ethan is there telling me that apparently I just disappeared and reappeared in front of him. This place is completely messed up. Ethan insists we get me to the director as we press on, and yet another flash happens. A bit longer this time. I work through the burned version of the facility and find a guy named Raphael. Apparently he's the one that sent out the distress call I caught in orbit. But that's crazy that it got through to me somehow. Probably through another flash? There was an accident down here 3 months ago. An experiment they were doing on an artifact they found down here triggered a gas leak and an explosion. Everybody else was burned to a crisp, but Raphael was spared, just trapped deep in the lab. Before I can learn more, I'm flashed back to Modern Lab. Man, I'm getting tired of this. Ethan gives me directions to the director directly, and says that I should try to navigate there on my own through the flashes. So after a bit of stumbling through various floors and flashes and fighting alien crabs called Kataxi in the burned out version, I finally am able to reach Director Patel's office. She tells me much the same that Raphael did, but from the opposite end. They were doing experiments in their deep lab on the artifact they found, and an explosion occurred. But it seems in this version of the lab, Raphael was able to stop the gas leak at the cost of his own life, but the access to the deep labs from the surface was disabled due to electronics issues. So they can't get down there to stop whatever experiment is still running that keeps causing these flashes. But there is a device in the lab I could find that might help to control them. They send me off to the lab with the hypothesis that I may be able to reach places they can't due to my ability to flash in between the different versions of the lab. Maybe so. I give it a shot anyway. I head out to the lab and sure enough, I flash through and different doorways are open to me. I run into both Ethan and Raphael again on my way there. Ethan gives me a fancy experimental gun to take out the Kataxi, and Raphael is just confused. I reach the lab and find the device and head back to the director's office to talk to another scientist, Maria. The device is a remote control for the experiment they're running, and Maria is able to tune the controls to stop the flashes from happening automatically, and hands me the device so that I can now trigger them at will. My final task here is to make my way to the deep lab, stop the experiment, grab the artifact, and restore access to the deep labs. Director Patel suspects that when I take the artifact, I'll have to choose which version of the lab to save, because it'll stop the switching. So basically, save Raphael, or save everybody else. I think I've already made my mind up about that, but I'll be sure when I get down there. It's a long haul, with lots of flashing, but I work my way through the labs. Tons of Kataxi in the burned lab, tons of turrets and robots in the fresh lab. So many doors and mazes and more flashing than I think is legally allowed in a public place. I reach the final lab where the artifact is being hit by a huge energy beam, and I need to shut down a bunch of switches to turn it off. I make the choice to do it in the fresh lab. Sorry, Raphael. But the life of one versus the life of dozens, while a tough call, is the bigger win. Besides, the fresh one is the one I saw first. I grab the artifact, head back up to the surface, and the whole team is there waiting for me to thank me. We bid our farewells, and I head back outside to find Sarah waiting patiently. She has no friggin' idea what I just went through in here. I'll tell her later. Right now, we head off to Paradiso for our wedding. Tie the knot before one of these missions makes me kick the bucket. It's a nice quiet ceremony. Just Sarah and I, Sarah's mom, and Aja, the former leader of Constellation and Sarah's close friend. So yeah, Mrs. Sarah Legend Daniel now. Vladimir points us off to a planet called Masada 3, where he expects the buried temple to be, and the final artifact. Guess it's time for the final showdown. Sarah and I jump over and sure enough, up in orbit, the hunter and the emissary are waiting for me in their ships, and an epic space battle takes place. It is a challenge for sure, but I've spent weeks upgrading my ship through all this questing, and my lasers are running at optimum pew-pew. I take them all out after a hard-fought battle and land down at the temple location. It's a massive dig site, covered in tons of dead workers, dead ecliptic mercs, living and angry ecliptic mercs, and living, angry, and powerful and angry Starborn guardians that are really angry and powerful. But I'm angry and powerful now too, so I just keep killing them all as I push through the base. I have more flashes here, but this time they're back to various points in my quest. I flash back to the mine on Vectera and see Lynn, or into the scow as the conversation with Petrov is taking place. But they're different. They know things they couldn't know, about me and my quest. I also flash into the universe that Starborn Sam Coe told me about, where I died. I saw my dead self in Vladimir's arms just after the attack on the Eye took place. Man, this is insane. I was just a space miner. Damn it, Barrett, you got me involved in all this. I reach the deepest cave of the temple where there are more floating rings, similar to the ones I found in the dome at the other temple where I got my power. The emissary and the hunter are down here, and they have the artifact pieces I'm missing to build the armillary. They give me one last chance to choose sides, but yet again, I refuse. Fully expecting a fight with them, I take one final, ultimate chance to put my persuasion skills to the test. And wouldn't you know it, my abilities have reached their peak. I was able to convince these guys to just hand their pieces over without a fight and let me become Starborn for a change. I'd die in all the other universes, but I got so far in this one. They agree, and they hand the pieces over and teleport away, leaving me and Sarah here alone. We have a chat up on the surface about what becoming a Starborn might do to us and our memories. If we'll recognize each other, even if we step through together. If we'll remember getting married, or if Constellation will remember us. Both Sarah and I know that we'll take the plunge eventually. Curiosity will inevitably get the better of us. But for now, we decide to live together here, and live together with the friends and family we have for as long as we can hold out.
A few moments later.
Unity! I build the armillary in the ship, and power up the grav drives, which instantly activates the armillary, and I vanish in a huge flash. As my vision begins to return, I see a beautiful sight of what looks like a black hole or something in front of me, and so many beautiful starfields all around me. Up ahead, a man is standing, or floating. There's no visible ground here, but I can walk, it seems. I walk over and holy fuck, it's me! I'm talking to me! Handsome gent. Apparently this is the unity my other self tells me, sort of the singularity of all space and time, the origin and destination of all energy in the universe. He's been here many times apparently, more timey-wimey stuff. He gives me a choice to either walk into the unity and be reborn, I will wake up in another universe to begin my hunt for the artifacts again, become Starborn, or I walk away and stay in my original universe until the day I die or decide to return to the unity to step through. He shows me what my version of the universe will be like if I leave, based on the choices I took in my life here. Apparently my marriage to Sarah serves as an inspiration to the galaxy, and more people get married. Sarah eventually becomes Starborn herself, and my quest for the artifacts and the work by Constellation continued by members that choose to stay behind influences the galaxy to explore further and learn even more about the universe. Well, I didn't come in here for nothing. So after a pleasant chat between two very sexy space dudes, me and myself, I step into the Unity and into new adventures in the unknown, out there in that beautiful expanse of stars, out there in the Starfield. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this narrative retelling of the Starfield main questline. I had a ton of fun playing this game and encourage those of you curious to pick it up if you can. There's so much more than this excellent main quest to see and do, and there will only be more with further DLC. Please consider leaving a like and a comment, and a subscription to get notified of more of my videos. I look forward to seeing you all out there in the Starfield, so until my next video, friends, as always, be legendary.